We're coming into a market where seller finance is going to be the number one thing that you can use to make your deals more profitable and easier to do. Hey guys, I wanted to kind of tell you guys a story about a deal we recently did with seller financing. And before you think that this was a single family, I'm going to tell you it was over $6 million. Here's the truth of the matter. If you find the right deal and you can solve the seller's problem, sometimes seller financing and or assumable financing is a deal that will work great for you. The building that I'm sitting in currently was just such a deal. We had this project under contract and we were buying it at a phenomenal price. The seller's problem was the building needed about $2 million in improvements to bring it up to where the market was demanding it needed to be to achieve the rents that made it viable. And here's what we did. We were in underwriting. We were buying the building at a 7 cap on 60% occupancy. We were getting a phenomenal deal on it. The problem was the banks didn't want to touch it. I went to 7 different banks. Every bank said, no, we're not going to do the deal. We actually went back. I had a funny phone call with the seller and I said, hey, I got some good news and I got some bad news. The seller said, well, what's the bad news? I said, the bad news is all the banks have turned down this loan. And the seller kind of laughed and he goes, well, what's the good news? And I said, the good news is you're going to finance it and we're still going to close in less than 30 days. And he kind of thought about it for a minute and he said, we are? And I said, yeah, I'm not going to argue with you on the purchase price. I'm going to tell you that if you'll finance it at this interest rate, I'm going to still be able to buy it and put the 20% down that I need to, as well as have the capital available to then do the improvements on the building. Now let's think about this from the seller's point of view. He has an asset that is not going anywhere fast. In fact, if it's going anywhere, it's going down because it was a building that was a 1980 built, all original, but it was in a phenomenal location right across from the major airport and just off the highway. What he saw was his downside was if I failed to perform, he may get the asset back, but improved from where he turned it over. So his only downside was the fact that he had a note that he had to satisfy. So we worked through the details, we figured out a way to do it, and we were able to get the deal closed. He got his sales price. I got the financing I've needed. So now we're sitting here in this building. It's been almost a year and a half. We're sitting here with the building at about 87% occupied and leased. We have a few units left. I've had conversations with banks and everybody right now is saying banks don't want to touch office. Banks don't want to touch office with a lot of vacancy. So we have been able to structure a deal that has been extremely profitable for our investors. It's been profitable for the seller and it came together because we solved the seller's problem. And I think what a lot of people fail to do is they fail to realize that there really are multiple sides to a deal. See, there's what the seller wants and there's what the seller needs. There's what the buyer wants and there's what the buyer needs. And somewhere in between all of that is the deal that's got to happen to make that a reality for everyone. And so if you take that deal and you purely focus on price, I would have never been able to get this deal done because I would have been driving down on the price to make it work for the bank and it would never have worked for the seller. If I purely looked at it and said, I can buy it at your price and I did that deal, I may not have been able to make it work because the financing was in flux. So by creating something that was a win-win for everybody, we were able to get this deal across the finish line. The seller is probably salivating because we've turned this building into a great deal. We're getting ready to finish out the financing on it and put it on permanent financing with the bank. So all things considered, this was a phenomenal deal for everybody and we have made this into a great investment. But how did I find this deal? Well, I was looking at properties that were on the market and I realized that this one had been on the market for a long time. And when I called the real estate agent, I made sure to understand what the seller's pain point was. They were hung up on the price, but they really wanted to get it sold. So I knew at that point they'd probably be flexible and open to some owner financing. And then I was able to leverage my network because when I talked with the seller, I gave him some references of other people that I'd worked with, some deals that I'd done. I pulled out some names in the community that they were able to reach out to and verify who I was. So I was able to backstop my resume with my network. Now, if you're looking to do the same thing, I may not recommend that your first deal be a 45,000 square foot office building that needs another $2 million remodel. But I will tell you to look for those deals that pencil, because the numbers say if you look at a $5 million building at 3% interest versus a $4 million building at 6% interest, you're probably going to wind up paying about the same at the end of 10 years. So to the buyer, it doesn't matter as much. To the seller, $1 million less on the exit is going to be huge. So solving the seller's problem of getting his $5 million purchase price is an enormous responsibility for you. But then on the other side, maybe you can navigate and get some better terms. The other thing you're going to want to look at is when tackling a problem, you're not going to want to just look at it and say, wow, this project has been on the market for 300 days. It must be a great deal. There must be something to figure out. There must be something to navigate and something I can pull out of this. You need to look at this clearly, and you need to say, I see that there's a tenant need for this product. I see where my rent pricing needs to be to make this a reality. And then you're able to pull all of that together, knowing that you have the ability to succeed because you've been able to navigate that, and you've been able to eliminate the seller's concerns, you've been able to eliminate your concerns, and you've been able to solve the problem for the tenants in the market that are looking for that specific product. And then once you've done that deal, you have the ability to expand on that knowledge and take down bigger deals, do better deals, and do them more often. So don't let this be something that you think only happens in a down market. This is something that can be applied all the time. It's just a matter of finding the right asset, the right seller, and solving that problem. Here's some problems that you need to consider. What does your track record look like? Because when you're going to the seller, they're betting on you at this point. Do you have enough funds to complete the project and make this a reality? Because the last thing you want to do is figure this out, get the deal done, and be unable to get it completed, which leaves you in a terrible spot and honestly doesn't help the seller out a ton either. So you want to make sure you thought through all the issues, because the truth is, at the end of the day, you could wind up in a very bad situation, and if you couldn't finance it before, you're definitely not going to be able to pull financing out at the last minute with a project that's half finished. So make sure you do your due diligence, make sure that you explore all your options, and make sure you underwrite it properly. But here's another example of a great way to do something with seller financing that's going to leave you in a very profitable position and leave you with the ability to continue your successful journey in real estate.